Welcome to this Saturday, August the 8th edition of The Truth, coming to you from West Palm Beach, Florida, just across the Intercoastal Waterway from Mar-a-Lago. We've got a wonderful show planned for you today, brought to you by Bogey's Beef and Perfect Circle Renewable Energy. We had a very spirited interview with Tina Peters earlier this week. She's going to be up in the next segment. I was troubled by the interview, frankly. I found her to be confrontational, not forthcoming about her story. She seemed to want to be portrayed in only a favorable light and accept no responsibility for anything that she did that may have been wrong or questionable. The fact of the matter is, I was really looking forward to the interview because I really admire what this lady has done for our country, the sacrifices she made for our country. You know, she tried to, well, she did. She got somebody to go in and make a copy of the hard drive on the voting machine in Colorado, in Grand Junction, Colorado, actually Mesa County, I believe. And this was after the election was over. She wasn't trying in any way to change the outcome of the election. She was trying to determine whether the vote tallies were legitimate. And the mainstream media says, oh, she was trying to overturn the election. Well, how can you overturn an election that's already been certified? What she was trying to do was expose fraud, if it existed, and reveal it to the American people so that we could stop it from happening again. I celebrate that. What I don't celebrate is her defensiveness, her unwillingness to talk about what I think are unseemly things she did, but I'm not even sure they were unlawful. And she felt like I was attacking her, or at least that's the impression she gave me and producer Anthony. And I really was pretty miffed by the time that interview was done. I'll just be honest with you. But I'm not going to let that cloud my judgment that I do think she is a patriot. I do think that she was acting with the right motives. I don't think that if she broke any laws, they were material or certainly did not warrant the kind of punishment she got. She was sentenced to 9 years in the federal penitentiary. She served 2, and she'd be there right now rotting away had President Trump not exerted so much pressure on the governor of Colorado that he commuted her sentence and released her. So I think you'll want to stay tuned for that interview. It was fiery, fair warning. You know, when it's over, all said and done with, I'd like to know what you think. Email me at johngordontruth@gmail.com. And tell me what you think. I'd really like to know. And while we're doing housekeeping, if you're watching us on Rumble, Getter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, X, please consider liking the broadcast and subscribe, if you will. We are really gaining subscribers every single day. Not as fast as we would like, but we're up to almost 40,000 just on Facebook. YouTube continues to be a challenge. I don't know whether we haven't figured out how to do business with them or whether they're punishing us, but we've been on there for 4 years and we're all the way up to 2,000 subscribers. Now, just so you know, it does not cost to subscribe. And if you really want to make the people at YouTube mad, just go to John Gordon Truth on YouTube Live and subscribe to our channel, hit the like button and the notifications button, and you'll always know when we put up a new post, and you can come check it out. Similarly, you can watch on Getter and Rumble and Facebook. So be sure to come over to John Gordon Truth to our site. If you're on the John Frederick site or cdm.press, who also carries our feed, we would welcome you to come over and join our site directly. It would, and the reason I say that, I am so grateful to John Fredericks and to cdm.press, our broadcasting partners, for carrying our feed. But you can watch it wherever you want to, but I really would like you to subscribe to our site because that only increases our numbers, and that's how we can get better guests and provide you better content. So please do us that small favor if you would. It's free, doesn't cost you anything, and you can do it in less time than I've talked about it. So thank you for your consideration on that. Tina Peters is going to come up in the second half hour. And then we've got Paul Renner. He is a candidate for governor in Florida. He is a Republican candidate in the primary, running against Byron Donalds. And this young guy, what's his name? Fishback. He's a millennial and seemingly come out of nowhere, and he's really getting a lot of steam. And then the current lieutenant governor is also on the ballot. President Trump has endorsed Byron Donalds. DeSantis, interestingly, has as yet not endorsed anyone. So as put off as I was by Tina Peters and her unwillingness to be genuine and transparent with us and tell her story, I was really miffed. All right, I've said it for the third time, I'll stop. But as put off as I was by her, I was really drawn to Paul Renner. He's smart. He was educated at Davidson College. Then he went to the University of Florida Law School. He has been the Speaker of the Florida House of Representatives. Oh, yeah, he's also a veteran. He served in the armed services for, I think, 20 years, and also has worked as a prosecutor. He's just a really impressive guy. So if you're in Florida and you want to know who to vote for governor, watch the interview. Maybe you like Paul Renner as I did. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're a Byron Donalds fan. I'm not feeling it. And why Trump endorsed Donalds so early, I really don't understand it. You know, he's got a story, mostly good. He grew up in poverty in New York and not Queens, but Brooklyn. Thanks, Anthony. But look, he's got a checkered past as a teenager. He dealt drugs. He sold some cocaine to teenagers. That's not cool. But hey, you know, Americans, we believe in redemption, and he's been apologetic. The problem I have with Byron Donalds is he just doesn't have a CV, a resume. He just hadn't done anything beyond serve in Congress and in public office. And I just don't think he's up to the job to run a $1.3 trillion economy, which is the size of Florida's economy. And it's not like, you know, there's some states, like you can go out west and they've got a good economy. South Dakota, for instance, they've got more millionaires live in South Dakota than any other state in the nation, I believe, or maybe it's third only to New York and California. I think I'm close on that. It used to be true. I don't know where it is today, matter of factly. But the fact is, it's mainly agricultural based. And so, you know, not to marginalize that at all, but that's one industry. And you can manage pretty effectively a state where you have one primary industry that drives the economy. In Florida, not only do you have agriculture, but you've got real estate development that is on fire. On fire from Jacksonville to Orlando to Tampa to Clearwater to Miami and West Palm Beach, where we're sitting right now. I mean, it's unbelievable how much investment is coming into this state and how many people are moving here. And then you've also got Disney. So Orlando is a great tourist destination, as is Miami. Miami is a very international city. You've got people coming from all over the world to visit Miami right now. They come in the summer when it's hot as Hades. I don't really understand it. But people from France, from South America, from Brazil. My wife and I were having dinner the other night, and there was a couple there from South America that had come up to Miami for a week, in part to watch the World Cup. But nevertheless, they were also motivated because they like Miami, where they just happen to have a condo. And so Miami is a vibrant, very fast-moving city. And then you've got Space Coast, where Elon Musk and NASA reside, just a couple of hours north of here. And so there are a lot of moving parts and a lot of complicated, hey, be quiet, Aura. My dang grok. She's listening when I'm not even talking to her. Let me kindly ask her to be quiet. Okay, sorry about that. Anyway, it's a complex environment, a complex state with a lot of moving parts. And it's a big state, a heavily populated state. So my conclusion is I don't think Byron Donalds is up to the challenge. I do like this guy. I also am anxious to learn more about Fishback, and I'm learning more about the current lieutenant governor who's also in that race. We'll see how it shakes out. And at some point, I'll tell you who I'm going to vote for. And if you're in Florida, you can write to me at johngordontruth@gmail.com and tell me you don't care who I vote for and just to mind my own business. Or you can write me, johngordontruth@gmail.com, and ask me what I think about a given topic or issue, or tell me what you think. I read every email and try and respond. I think I respond to most people if even it's a thumbs up. All right. A lot of stuff going on in the news this week. One of the things that I'm focused on is our U.S. economy. Folks, we're witnessing a melt up. Now, for the 100th time, 30th time, 15th time, I'm not sure how many, Trump says we're close to a settlement with Iran. With that announcement, the price of oil plummeted. We've gone from over $100 a barrel back down now to the low 70s. If we get that agreement, it's going to plummet even more. But do you remember that I have been telling you that I did not understand why Americans are paying more at the pump for gas when we don't buy a single drop of fuel or oil from Iran? So why, and we're energy independent. All of our petroleum comes from inside the U.S. So why would that cause American oil companies to raise the price of gasoline? Well, they released their earnings this week, and their earnings were up gargantuan. So much so that Trump said it was too much. Exxon and Mobil and the petroleum companies, he said, are making too much money at the expense of the American people. So, gentlemen, if you're the CEO of one of those companies, I really encourage you to think about your pricing strategy, because Trump is watching you, and things are going to get awfully dicey if you don't get your house in order and give us Americans the price relief that we deserve. None of our oil comes from Iran. And U.S. gas prices should not be going up, because all of our oil and production and refinement is inside our 50 states. So get real. Stop punishing the American people because you think you can blame it on the war in Iran, for which you have no consequence. So Trump sees it, and I've been saying it for several weeks, if not months, and we're seeing those chickens now coming home to roost. Well, if you watch the mainstream media, all you hear about is socialism and communism. Everybody's talking about this candidate and that candidate and Mandami and this guy, what is it? Where is his name? Abdul El-Sayed in Michigan. He is the Democratic nominee, and he's an avowed communist. God help us. But I've felt for the last 10 years that we give AOC and the squad and Bernie Sanders way too much oxygen. We fan their flames way too much. Why don't we just basically ignore them? Why are we continually keeping them in the news? Well, we keep them in the news because they make people mad. And evidently, that's the way to get people to watch your program. Well, I've never sat here and tried to make anybody mad. I may have made them mad, but it wasn't because I was trying to be mean or push their buttons. I just, call them out on their stories when I don't think they're telling the truth. But aside from that, we're really giving people like Abdul El-Sayed way too much attention. He is running for the United States Senate, and he is running from a swing state, that would be Michigan, and he did win the Democratic nomination. And I actually am celebrating. I am celebrating because, like Trump said, Republicans do real well on ballots when they're running against a communist. Here's President Trump.
But in Congress, we're working every day to defend the American dream for you and your children, the radical left, the maniacs that are trying to destroy it with the disaster known as not socialism, communism. It's communism. These are communists. And the polls were wrong again last night when they thought it would be a landslide victory for a hater of Jews and a hater of Israel. This guy hates Jews. Somebody said, oh, that's a little strong. No, he hates Jews and he hates Israel. Abdul El-Sayed. Can you believe this? This could only happen to me. Abdul El-Sayed, lovely gentleman. He's a man of hate. And now he's going around saying, no, I love everybody. He doesn't love everybody. Put him in office. You're going to find out what he loves. He doesn't love Israel. He doesn't love Jewish people. He hates them. He hates them with a passion that burns in his heart, and there's not a frickin' thing he can do about it. There's not a thing he can do about it because he hates them. But the socialist candidate ran up big margins against the communist candidate in Detroit, and I was saying that probably it's corrupt. It's probably corrupt. I don't know who the hell they wanted. I couldn't care less. We do better. Actually, we do better against the communists, according to every poll. The poll says we do better against the communists. So he won, and so I think I'm happy. I put out a statement. Congratulations to the Republican Party. The communists want to take their ruinous and deadly ideology of misery and squalor to every state in America, but we're not going to let them.
Well, so it's just mind-boggling to me that we're sitting here even talking about this. We're actually defending against an avowed communist who's running for a pretty important office, and we're having to run a Republican against him. I mean, that's really scary. President Trump expresses his frustration in this same context, actually, with the mainstream media. He published on Truth Social just yesterday. He said, I was 28-1 this week on endorsements, and numerous of them were outliers. But if you studied the fake news, you would think that it was just the opposite, 1 for 28. All they talk about was the one, Mohammed El-Sayed, I guess. Is that it? What is the one, Anthony? And that's why they call it fake news. That he had an endorsement that did not win. But anyway, he endorsed somebody and had 29 endorsements, and 28 of them won. That's pretty staggering. I wish I had won when Trump endorsed me when I was running for Attorney General. We just got in way too late. But anyway, I was honored to have done that, and wish we could have won, I should say. But anyway, the mainstream media does not tell the truth. And Trump calls them fake news. I just call them liars. I just go right to the mat, just right to the crux of the matter. They just lie, kind of like Anthony Fauci lied, and the media lies to support the liar. Trump did say rather humorously that he and El-Sayed do have one thing in common. Abdul Rahman, he just goes by Abdul. I can't pronounce his name. Abdul Rahman Mohammed El-Sayed wants to terminate the filibuster. and so do I. At least we have something in common. President Donald J. Trump. Well, this is something that I disagree with the president on. We had a majority leader who was a Democrat 15 years ago from Las Vegas. He wanted to do away with the filibuster. I'm telling you, the filibuster is an institutional process that has existed since the beginning of time, and it's intentional. The conventional wisdom is that the forefathers made it very difficult for Congress or the president to get anything done. And it was done intentionally because you would have that tension there so that bias and party loyalty would have to compete with the legitimacy and the merits of a proposed piece of legislation, like the SAVE Act. Now, I wish we didn't have the filibuster when we're talking about the SAVE Act, because that's what I want. But if it was something the Dems want, then I'd probably want the filibuster. So it cuts both ways. I'm not in favor of getting rid of the filibuster. If through playing with the rules we can get the SAVE Act attached to part of a reconciliation bill, then while I don't like it, I could stomach it. But we need to pass the SAVE Act. And if you want to help, and this is one thing Tina Peters and I did, and the fact of the matter is we agreed on everything. I just didn't like the fact that she lacked transparency and she wouldn't talk about the unseemliness of the things that happened after the election and things that she did. She thought I was blaming her or attacking her. I wasn't. I was just getting her to tell the story. But she wouldn't tell the story. Anyway, why am I going back to that again? Because I don't want to monkey with the system. And what's good for us today may be horrible for us tomorrow. So I think that is a very short-term bad strategy. So I don't support that. And the other thing that really amazes me is that there's so many people that are overtly showing their anti-Semitism towards Jews. We had an unwritten rule in this country virtually my entire life until just a year or two ago, really, that you just did not slander or say disparaging things about members of the Jewish faith. I think, in my mind, it was they've suffered enough. And they suffered through gas chambers in Germany and the Holocaust and Adolf Hitler. And so we consciously, intentionally decided to support Jews, both in this country and somewhere along the line in the late 40s and 50s, by recognizing the state of Israel as a homeland for Jews. I think it's gotten distorted. I really don't like the meanness in attacks on Jews that you see on college campuses. And I don't like the distortions of the truth. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I really don't know what took place in Gaza and is taking place. You get so much conflicting information, and it really depends on who you talk to. We had a Jew on the show a month ago, and she and I got into an arm wrestling match over whether Israel had committed genocide in Gaza. I'm open to the possibility that they have, but she was adamant that they have not, and that is a fiction perpetuated by the liberal leftists and the people who really do hate Jewish people and who do hate Israel and who are painting a very untrue narrative. And then I had someone on the show in the last couple of weeks who said, John, you keep saying that the media is 85% controlled by the Jews. How can you think that this narrative about genocide in Gaza could be perpetuated given the fact that Jews control the media in this country? So it does leave me in a state of confusion, frankly. I don't know what you think. I'd like to know whether you're confused about it or not. Here's where I am. I am not confused about wanting our country to continue a strategic and friendly relationship with Israel. Period. Hard stop. Now, having said that, I do not want Netanyahu and Israel to be influencing our youth in this country through social media or other tactics that they could spread propaganda. No more than I would want China to do that or Russia. Pick the adversary. Fight your fight, but don't come into our country and fight it in the court of public opinion. That's the job of our policymakers. That's the job of Republicans and Democrats. President Trump can make the case for why we're spending $30 billion to support Israel militarily and through arms. Now, the lady that we had on the show said that's not a fair number, because really what we're doing is selling armaments to Israel. So they're really buying our weapons. I just don't know. I don't know where the truth lies. And we'll continue to watch it and study it and do a deep dive on it. But let's face it, it is part of our national conversation today. And I wish I had greater clarity around it. I've spent a lot of time trying to get clarity, but it's kind of like a shill game. And who do you believe? We see that played out on national television with John Fetterman and Jon Stewart. Let's roll the tape. Watch this.
You're literally saying we can all have discussions, except when it comes to Israel, which is not America. It seems like a weird line to draw.
Well, I don't think that's weird. I think what history demonstrates is that when people or a government or people turn their back to the Jewish community, things end really badly, and it's a dangerous.
Jewish community and Israel are not the same thing, brother man. They're not. That is not the same thing.
No. It's like, hey, it's like if I have to pick a side for after 10/7 and after Iran, I'm always going to stand with Israel. I'm always going to vote and support whatever that's necessary to protect themselves and to prosecute Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran too. And the very left never said a peep after Iran executed 30 to 40,000 young people in there just for protesting for democracy.
Bingo. For a Democrat, I really like Fetterman. So I'm in the middle between those two competing points of view, and I'm not trying to be wishy-washy. It's just that I think that we can have our cake and eat it too. Where I find myself is where I think Tucker finds himself, but man, he has just been ridiculed and misrepresented, I think. My point is, I want to support Israel. I want us to continue to support Israel. I want it to be balanced. And most of all, I don't want Israel working inside the borders of our country. I just don't. I think Mossad is here. I think they have worked inside our country with the CIA. The fact is, I trust neither of those institutions. I trust the good parts of the CIA and Mossad. I distrust and vehemently oppose and dislike, I hate the bad part of those organizations because they both kill people. And I'm not down with that. Now, when Trump killed that Iranian guy that car bombed all of our servicemen and women, you can't have any sympathy for the guy. But I just don't know whether that was the right way to have handled it. I would have so much preferred to have plucked him out of Iran like we plucked out the head of Venezuela and brought him before a military court or some court, either in our country or an international court, whatever. But I believe in law. I believe in due process. And I don't believe in killing people. Except under the most extreme circumstances where they pose an imminent threat that cannot be otherwise arrested. And that's my problem with the CIA. The ex-CIA officer who we had on our show, John, what's his name, Anthony? Kiriakou, said that John Brennan used to meet once a week with his top brass at the CIA to review the kill list. That's not a moral nation. That's not how we should be conducting business. I don't believe. Maybe I'm naive. Write to me and tell me. JohnGordonTruth@gmail.com. But it's a very slippery slope. When you go in and you kill 2 and 3 levels of Iranian leadership and they want to retaliate against Trump, I mean, do you really think that that's not a predictable reaction? And if God forbid they ever succeed, I think it would devolve us into a serious international crisis and maybe would cause us to go into an all-out war with Iran. But the killing needs to stop. Following international law, the laws of God, our own set of morality in this country, which is what it was founded upon, is where I yearn for us to get back to. I really do. If we're going to lead, we need to lead like leaders lead, and we need to embrace a moral code, and we need to embrace international law. All right. Well, you know the pictures that used to go around about 10 years ago, "Where's Waldo?" Well, that has been surpassed by "Where's Mitch?" And Mitch McConnell has not been seen now for how long? 2.5, 3 months, Anthony? And a lot of people are suspicious, and a lot of people think that he died. That is what the undercurrent is. And so to diffuse that, somebody put up pictures of Mitch with his Chinese wife in their hospital room in Washington. The only problem is there's the picture. He looks happy. He looks alive. I'm just not willing to accept the idea that this is AI. People say, "Oh, he was photographed in that same shirt just a few months ago before he ever went to the hospital. This is AI." The fact of the matter is, I don't know. I'm not willing to go there without more data, but I will tell you this. I have not seen any video or independent journalist pictures of McConnell leaving the hospital, which is what we've been told now, and entering his townhouse in Washington. Now, you would think if he left the hospital and went to his townhouse that there would be citizen journalists and hounds out on the streets just waiting to get that picture. And there haven't been any. But we're told that he's home resting and recovering and everything's going to be okay, don't you worry. Now, the cynical among us believe that this is an intentional cover-up, that they're not willing to let people know that McConnell may have actually passed away. I'm not advancing that rumor. I'm just not prepared to do that. But I'm just telling you what the, I don't know, the conspiratorialist. Okay, sorry, Anthony. The conspiratorialist will say that he's dead. They're not letting anybody know because John Thune is afraid that the governor of Kentucky will appoint a more conservative replacement to the Senate as an interim if there's a vacancy, which the law would allow and require actually, and that he would appoint a conservative, maybe even Thomas Massey, for God's sakes, and that they would push the SAVE Act. Now, I don't know. What do you think? It's pretty far-fetched, but I've gotten to the point where I really don't believe anything that I'm told until I have proof positive of it. Russia, Russia, Russia. Who's telling the truth? Well, we know now because Tulsi Gabbard put them out there for the world to see. And we know that Fauci lied because a whistleblower found the Fauci files and put them out on the internet. And nobody's denying that they're his. And in those emails, he said that he basically contradicted his public statements on so many levels. Masking, social distancing, the vaccine, the origin of the virus, all this stuff, you know. And so I've just gotten, it's made me cynical to the point where I don't know who or what to believe. Do you believe the narrative, the government story? I mean, the fact of the matter is I don't believe much of anything the government tells us. Even under Trump, I've got questions. And I'll show you that in just a second, where I'm coming from on that. But the difference that I would make, for the most part, is that Trump's white lies are not material. Who cares how many people were at his inauguration? I don't like the fact that he told us that he wouldn't deface the East Wing in building the new ballroom. And once the construction began, we see pictures of the East Wing being obliterated. Well, I mean, we can quibble on whether that's material or not. I mean, the fact of the matter is he was going to build the ballroom regardless. And I think I'm for the ballroom. I'm 100% for the ballroom. Unlike the federal judge who ruled that the ballroom construction cannot continue because Trump lacked the authority to commission the ballroom. So, one, that's an activist judge. Two, the judge had no business injecting themselves. If anybody was going to litigate that, it really should be between the executive branch and the Congress, in my opinion. Not with some district court judge appointed by a Democrat who got then a lifetime appointment. It doesn't work for me. But supposedly she stopped the construction, and I guess it's headed straight to the Court of Appeals and will soon end up in the Supreme Court. What is the alternative at this point? $200 million has been spent. A third of the construction has been done. The hole has been dug. The basement has been constructed. The framing is up. I mean, I don't know what the sanction is or what the ramification is if Trump abused his authority. But really, at the end of the day, do you really care? Is that the hill you want to die on? I mean, I said in the moment that I did not like the way he went about it. I would have done it differently if I was president. I would have convened a presidential commission to evaluate architects and engineers to design the ballroom. And it would have been a collaborative effort that involved the American people, historians, and people who are the top of their field in architecture, particularly historical architecture, to maintain the cohesiveness with the White House itself. That's how I would have preferred to have done it. Just like I would have preferred for other people to have changed the name of the Kennedy Center. So I call Trump out on all this stuff. But they're not deal breakers for me. They're not deal breakers for me like floating a spy balloon over the country, letting it hover over our nuclear bases, and then taking $3 million from a company linked to the CCP. Oh, I wonder who would have done that. Oh, yeah, that would have been Joe Biden. Why are we still talking about his cognitive problems? Why aren't we talking about his corruption? Why aren't we talking about him allowing fentanyl to flood into this country over the southern border? Why aren't we talking about him desecrating the Constitution and the laws of the land by opening the southern borders and giving those people phones and money and places to live and scooters to ride around on? Why aren't we talking about his lack of loyalty to our country? I think those acts were treasonous. I really do. I think how he ended up in the place he did, I don't know. I hope he doesn't hate our country. The fact of the matter is he was a public servant and one who I disliked for like 40 years. Talk about living on the dole. He was on the wrong side of just about every issue. But why aren't we talking about his treasonous acts? I don't think he set out to be treasonous, but he certainly acted treasonous when he went to the Ukraine and had the person, the inspector general or the fraud czar who was investigating him, had him removed, and then had his son put on the board of Burisma, making $1 million a year. I mean, the corruption was overwhelming. Where did it go? James Comer said, we've got the receipts. We've got the evidence. And then just poof, it goes away. That's really upsetting to me. So even though I do get disappointed with Trump, excuse me, he does disappoint me. And I am loyal to Trump, but I'm not blindly loyal to Trump. And I am going to call him out when he steps over the line, like he did when he renamed the Kennedy Center. I was glad when the Park Service reversed that decision. And I guess that was the work of a judge who said that he had overreached. And his name's it's back to the Kennedy Center as it should be. I didn't like it, but it wasn't a deal breaker. I don't like this. Trump wanted Jeanine Pirro to indict and try David Hearn. He's a former Olympic athlete. He rode his bike down the mall, stopped at the reflecting pool, and it depends on who you listen to, but what I have been able to discern, and actually what he says, he stopped his bike, he went over and he did pick up a piece of the lining of the reflective pool that he noticed was loose and inspected it, and he didn't rip it off and take it home as a souvenir. But Trump, come on, Mr. President, drove his motorcade through the reflecting pool before it had water in it. And if you're on social media with us on Getter, Rumble, YouTube, or Facebook, you can see the pictures. That's Trump's motorcade driving through the reflecting pool before it had water in it. You're telling me the bicyclist who lifts up a piece of the liner and looks at it and doesn't destroy it or doesn't rip it off and just leaves is guilty of a felony while you're driving your motorcade through the reflecting pool with a liner in it? Give me a break. That's Biden level hypocrisy. And then he calls Jeanine Pirro to the White House and dresses her down because she refuses to prosecute the guy. Mr. President, are you feeling okay? Are you doing okay these days? What's this about? And I love Jeanine Pirro. She's a fighter, and she has been loyal to the end. And for you to dress her down and to reprimand her for not prosecuting somebody who was guilty of nothing and prosecuting him as a felony so you can keep your image intact because you hired the contractor, I believe on a no-bid contract, and he let you down because he did a lousy job in the construction, and that's the real problem. But you drove a whole set of limos your motorcade through the same reflective pool before it got filled. How much damage did that do? Maybe it didn't do any, I don't know. But it just seems really hypocritical to me. And that's the one beef I've got with Trump. Loyalty is a one-way street with him. And for him to dump on Judge Jeanine when she has been a fighter and a defender and a warrior for him and our country, and he does it all the time. I call him, I want to call him Donald the Great, but unfortunately, I have to refer to him as Donald the Ingrate because he just dumps on his best friends when they step out of line in his terms and don't do exactly what he thinks they should do or what he tells them to do. And, you know, I believe in the chain of command, and I would certainly not buck the president if I was working for him and he issued me an order. But if I am nominated and approved, confirmed to an office in the United States federal government, my loyalty is to the U.S. Constitution and the laws of the country, not to the then President of the United States. Now, it's situational. It depends on what the issue is. If he issues an order to the Secretary of War and he doesn't follow it, then we got a real problem because the president is the commander-in-chief. You don't have that prerogative to disobey the commander-in-chief. But when you're a prosecutor and you've got to make a judgment call based on evidence and law, you've got to be free to do that without pressure from the president. I'm just not down with that. And I'm not down with embarrassing her and evidently dressing her down. It's not cool, man. I don't care if you're the president. It's just not cool. Now, every time I get after Trump like that, 6 months later, I learned he was right after all. So I hope this isn't one of them. If it is, I'll come back and apologize for my assessment on it. But that's where I am with that right now. So anyway, I don't know how the man stands it. He's got everybody domestically and foreign nipping at his heels 24/7. And he's a hard worker. He's a fighter. And, you know, whether the guy who was riding the bike pulled the piece of tape off the reflecting pool, is that material to you? The fact of the matter is, I mean, I don't care. I just don't care. I don't mean that I don't care. I mean, I don't care in terms of my assessment of Trump's job rating. If his contractor screwed up the job, I mean, I care, but I really don't in terms of my view of Trump. If the contractor screwed up and Trump screwed up by appointing him or getting him the work, I mean, I may not like it, but it's not a deal breaker for me. It's not material to me. Fighting a war in Iran is material to me. Getting the SAVE Act passed is material to me. Getting this economy on fire, which he has accomplished, is material to me. Helping people get employed, that really counts. Now, the employment numbers came out Friday. They weren't as good as predicted. We had about 30,000 jobs. The predictions were 80,000, but the stock market thumbed its nose at those numbers and continues to march upward. And it's marching upward because there are only there are three things holding this economy back even a little bit. It's the war in Iran. That needs to get settled. Like I said, we're not dependent on Iran's oil, so it's really not hurting us. But the optics are bad, and the morale is bad around it. You could put deportation in that category. We want Trump to deport the illegals in this country, but we want him to do it humanely, not through alligator Alcatraz and not through ICE pulling guns on people, even though I hasten to add those cops in Minnesota were justified in shooting the people. The lady tried to run the cop down. She actually hit the cop with her car. That's using a car as a deadly weapon. I'm sorry you don't do that. I didn't want her to die, but she made an impulsive decision It cost her life. I'm sorry. That's the way the ball bounces. And then the other guy who was protesting and been protesting for a week went home to get his pistol, wore it on his belt, and then went out and then tried to intervene with ICE when they were lawfully detaining someone. That's another thing you just don't do. And he did it. So, but even though I don't question the legitimacy of what they did, the optics are bad. The means and the methods are not working. And it's messy, and it is causing the loss of lives. Not that, but who's to blame? It's not ISIS to blame. It's the protesters that are to blame. It's the people that are engaged in lawlessness that are to blame. But the media puts those pictures up, and people don't like it. And so those things are material. And I would just urge you, Mr. President, try and find it in your heart to be good to the people who've been good to you. I think in the most part you are. I mean, you've made wonderful cabinet appointments, absolutely spectacular. And I know they are loyal to you. But if they mess up, you think Jeanine Pirro messed up. I learned a long time ago, you praise in public and you criticize in private. And I think that this is one of those occasions. And you're just going to have to deal with the bad press and images of the reflecting pool until it becomes yesterday's news. Like I said, I don't care. It's not material to me. I mean, I wish it had turned out different, but nobody's going to dump on, I'm not going to, and I don't think people are going to disparage you because the pool leaks or doesn't work or whatever it doesn't do. And that is the truth. And I am John Gordon. Today's broadcast is brought to you by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy. They're a restaurant services company in Atlanta, Georgia, serving all of North Georgia. If you're tired of automated attendance, unreliable, dirty, not predictable service, call Perfect Circle Renewable Energy. That you can find them on the web at www.pcrenergy.com. PCRE Energy, PCRenergy.com. That's it. And we're also brought to you by Bogey's Beef. They make the best beef jerky and beef sticks you can imagine. They found a real niche in golf courses. They're available in golf courses from east to west, the East Coast to the West Coast, the South to the North. They've got 60 of the top 100 golf courses, and then a whole lot more. You can find them in specialty grocery stores, convenience stores, on Amazon, and you can go and buy directly. Just search for bogiesbeef.com, and it's really good. I don't even like beef jerky, but I love Bogey's Beef.